Well, first of all, I got to tell you, I'm really excited for this game in particular because I think this one has a lot of potential to be not only a fun and entertaining game to watch as a football fan, but also to be really high scoring because I get entertained by lower scoring defensive games too. But this one has potential to be a massive fantasy outing. And we had some massive breaking news along with this one too. Apparently, Amon Ra St. Brown is playing. So I don't know what to think yet. I mean, really, like, I never thought that he would actually play in this game. I kind of thought it was all just kind of talk. And it makes sense, I guess, on one hand, because they are trying to save their season. They are trying to make the playoffs. I guess I get it, but I also don't know if it makes much sense. Because here's the thing. I really do think the re-injury risk of him is very high. Like, I think that he could get re-injured tonight and it could be an utter disaster. So I'm not going to say that Amon Ra St. Brown is a must start in every situation, even though the matchup's really strong. I think this ankle injury is very cautious, and we should be worried about it and being smart about this one. So we're going to have some questions to answer here tonight about Amon Ra St. Brown, I bet. But other than that, we're going to get into some questions tonight. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel to show your support, and join FS Roundup today and make a start-sit poll for your decision that you're trying to deal with right now. Real happy, what's going on? Amon Ra's back, baby. Should I start him or fade this week? Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, man. I really, like I said, don't view him as a must start because I got to tell you, like, him getting rolled up on last week with the ankle was a bad look. And I think it was like diagnosed as a high ankle sprain. So he's clearly going to be playing on a bunch of pain medication tonight. Like, that would be my guess of what happens with Amon Ra tonight, is that he's playing on a bunch of medication. It's not like he's just, playing on this game completely sober. Like, he's going to have some downers that are helping him with this. So my point is the pain management is going to be a thing tonight. And honestly, like, I think the chance of re-injuring this even worse is actually high. Like, I'm worried about Amon Ra tonight. It's going to come down to what you've got around you. Because, like, you remember my rankings of my wide receivers this week. Rashee Rice was my wide receiver 9, and I would not play Amon Ra over Rashee Rice. So he's in, like, top 12 to top 15 range, I would say, in the wide receiver department. So it really just comes down to who you've got as an option. I don't have much confidence in this one. I got to be honest. I'm very worried about him tonight. You said, me neither, brother. This might have just saved my playoff run. Yeah, like I said, for that reason, like from a fantasy perspective, I'd rather he just sit out tonight, to be completely honest with you. Because if we could get him to sit out tonight and then he returns next Sunday, that's like 2 weeks. That's over 2 weeks of resting time. And he's not doing that. He's playing a week after it happened. I'm worried. I'm really worried about him tonight. Jerry Judy Juice, what's going on? I need help with my wide receiver 2 and flex spot this week. I have Sutton, Rome, Genty, and Mike Evans. Who do I start? So I'll play Genty pretty easily over the rest of them. I think Genty, the matchup isn't great, but you kind of always know what you're going to get out of Genty, which is he's always going to be a guy that gets 20-plus opportunities, and whether or not he gets in the end zone really determines whether he's going to get a 25-point game or a 15-point game. But either way, most of the time, he's getting 12 to 15 points on a pretty regular basis as a floor. So I would definitely say that Genty's the best option. So he would go in my flex. Now, wide receivers, I've got Sutton over Rome, so I'll go with Sutton and stick with my rankings. While it is a very close call, like Sutton over Rome is not exactly the most confident play I've got, but I would rather do it because Sutton, at the very least, like the thing with Bo is like it's easy to pick on Bo because he's been inconsistent and less consistent at hitting his ceiling than Caleb has been. But the Caleb experience is not exactly one that's awesome to deal with either, right? Like Caleb, the difference between him and Bo is Bo usually is an accurate target with deep balls because Sutton's so big. Rome gets a lot of balls thrown out over his head. So I think Sutton is probably a better bet over Rome. Now, Mike Evans, let's check the practice report. I have not checked it today with Mike Evans, so let's see what the update is on him. Mike Evans, so I would imagine he practiced today because he did practice yesterday. Mike Evans. I don't feel like he's gonna come back this week. I think it's premature on him coming back. So I don't think you're gonna have to deal with this. And in fact, honestly, if it was me, I think I would play Sutton over Mike. Because the thing with Mike is like his games that we've seen him play, hit or miss, right? And that's been Sutton's game, is hit or miss. So I'd rather take the guy who's been active and isn't dealing with an injury recovery with Sutton. So either way, I think I would go with Sutton. But just to be clear, I don't think you're going to have to deal with that this week. I don't think Mike's coming back. Next question we've got. REK4NI. What's going on? Should I play Brissett over Bo? I would. Yeah, listen, my whole thing today on the quarterback rankings is that with Bo Nix, it's just a guy that isn't consistent enough. And so the way I look at it is like with Bo, we could either get 25 points or 12 points. With Brissett, we're getting a very steady 20 regardless of matchup. So, yeah, I don't love the matchup, but it also is a position I'm in where it's like it just makes sense to take the safe floor because the ceiling is a couple points different and the likelihood that Bo hits the ceiling is like 20% on any given week. So, I'd rather just take the steady play with Brissett. Adrian, what's going on? Good to see you in here tonight. Could Amon Ra St. Brown be a decoy because of health? 100%. 100% that could be exactly what happens tonight. Look, I said it off the top. I am very concerned with Amon Ra tonight. Like, he is in no imagination a must-play. Like, I've got Rashee Rice ranked over him, and Rashee Rice was my wide receiver 9 this week. So I'm not exactly feeling gung-ho about pulling the trigger and saying Amon Ra St. Brown is going in my lineup. So it's going to be a case-by-case situation on if I'm going to tell you to play him, because you're exactly right, Adrian. He could absolutely be a decoy tonight, 100%. So I have no confidence in playing him over guys that I know are going to be active. And like, I'll even take it a step farther. I think if it's between J-Mo in the same team, the same game, or Amon Ra St. Brown, I think I'd rather play J-Mo, because you're exactly right. We've seen it time and time again. Players who come back from injury when we know they shouldn't be coming back, and that's the case here, and they just be decoys in the game. And that's exactly what I think could happen tonight. So I am not considering him a must start. Appreciate the super chat. That's the perfect question for the framework of Amon Ra St. Brown start sits tonight. He's not a must start. I'm very concerned, and I do think that he could be a decoy tonight, 100%. So we'll have to see. Nate Willis, what's going on, man? Good to see you in here tonight. Pick one, Stafford or Burrow. Pick 2, Jefferson, Jameson, McLaurin. From waivers, Myers or Judkins for Week 14 and the playoffs. Thanks, King. Appreciate that. Stafford or Burrow. I said this on the quarterback rankings today. I've got a lot of confidence in Burrow. And I wanted to answer this because I know I got a question, at least one question on it in those rankings today, was about the Buffalo game, the Cincinnati-Buffalo game. There's expected to be some pretty inclement weather, potentially snow. So it could be very heavy snow. So people were asking me, does that affect things like, did you know about the weather? And if you didn't, how would it affect the rankings? And my response to that is this. Listen, if it were coming down to Jacoby Brissett and even like Jared Goff in inclement weather, right? Like I would have a much different ranking for them if it was going to be a massive snow game. But we're talking about two quarterbacks who are, not only used to the weather because they play in it all year, not all year, but at this time of the year, they're used to playing in this kind of weather. Burrow and Allen, because, Cincinnati, Joe Burrow, he deals with snow. And B, Josh Allen deals with this weather every year. And B, these are both quarterbacks that have shown to excel in that weather. So I don't really worry about Burrow that much. Like, I think Burrow is a high upside play, weather aside, weather involved. Like, I don't think it matters because I've seen Burrow dominate in these types of games before. So I'm not worried about Burrow personally. I'd play him over Stafford, although Stafford is right there. I mean, Stafford was exactly one spot lower in my rankings than Burrow. I have a lot of confidence in him too, but it just comes down to matchup. And I think the plus matchup is going to be Cincinnati's matchup because they're going to be able to, they're going to have to put up points, I think, in a shootout type of game. So I would personally prefer Burrow in this one. But it is close enough to where it could be a gut call. Jefferson, Jameson, McLaurin, pick 2. I'll just make it simple, and I'll bench Justin Jefferson. I mean, I've been looking for excuses to bench him just because of the fact that I don't like what he's been putting up this year from a fantasy perspective. And if he was a smaller name guy, he would not be viewed as a guy that you can't bench just because. Like, he would be viewed as a cut candidate at this point if his name was not Justin Jefferson. And I'm not saying for people to cut him. I'm just saying Justin Jefferson, the quarterback play is so bad, and you can't rely on it moving forward because if you're in playoff contention, he's not the reason why. So don't have fear benching JJ. When it comes to Terry, like whether it's Daniels this week or whether it's Mariota, they've both shown the ability to target him, and Terry in his games this year has been pretty good. So Terry to me is a play. J-Mo, I would still play him over Justin Jefferson. Once again, I don't care that Amon Ra St. Brown is back in action. It probably lowers his floor, but his ceiling is still high. I would say J-Mo's ceiling tonight is still in the range of 25 points. So, yeah, to me, I'm not worried about ceiling when it comes to J-Mo. I worry about the floor. So, yeah, I think J-Mo, I'll just go ahead and play him over Jefferson because if he hits like 4 points tonight, well, that could be what you get from Justin Jefferson. So, I think it's just pretty easy to do that. And then from waivers, Myers or Judkins for week 14 and the playoffs. Judkins is probably the answer here, mostly because running backs are so valuable. If you only have room for one, what I would say to this is keep an open mind about dropping somebody else because I do think that Jacoby Myers has, he's earned enough of clout, for lack of better term, in Jacksonville for him to be a rostered player. Like, he shouldn't be on wire. Neither should Judkins, but, like, Myers shouldn't be on the wire. So, Judkins is probably the priority ad between the two because he is a workhorse running back, and Cleveland does have opportunistic matchups coming up. And, again, like, I have no problem going and trying to pick up Myers, too, if you have the room for it and if you can make a decision that may be tough but makes sense. Because I don't think Myers should be on waivers either. Appreciate the super chat, man. I reckon, appreciate the super chat. Thanks, brother. I appreciate you. Thank you for being in here tonight. That's all that matters. We get to take the journey together, so I appreciate you. Michael Merowitz, what's going on tonight, man? 2 leagues. Dart, Purdy are quarterback 2. Drop 1 to pick up Jaden Daniels on a bye. You're on a bye, is what I'm assuming. Other league, Darnold and Jones. It could pick up JD or Purdy for the playoffs. So we'll start out with the first one, which is Dart and Purdy. Drop one of them for Jaden Daniels. It's tough because I would like to. Purdy's the one on the bye. So it's tough because I think that Purdy is a guy I would like to keep because he does have some opportunistic matchups in his way. But at the same time, dropping Dart, it just feels very reckless to me. Because here's the thing that we got so used to last year with Jaden Daniels is his ability to move and also be able to throw the ball down the field. Well, Jackson Dart, outside of 1 week against New England, has done that the entirety of the season. I mean, that was his worst game by far in his fantasy season this year. The one he just played against the Patriots. That's just not going to be the case, like, every single week. And I don't know if you're, like, planning on picking one of these guys back up off bye weeks, because they both have bye weeks. But dropping Dart feels reckless to me. After one bad game, I'm not ready to drop him. I do think he has upside. So I think if it were me, and if I was in your position, if I had to choose, I would drop Purdy for Jaden Daniels. But I'm not convinced Jaden's coming back this week. Like, I think if anything, it'll probably be next week. So I don't exactly feel like I'm driven to, take that opportunity, because I don't know what Jaden will look like when he gets back. But if I did, I think I would drop Purdy. And then the other league, Darnold and Jones could pick up JD or Purdy for the playoffs. So like I said, I think Purdy is a guy that makes a lot of sense to have for a playoff run. Because let's just go through Brock Purdy's playoff schedule. So the 49ers, they've got some favorable matchups. So they've got the Tennessee Titans off the bye week, which is, again, very favorable. It's in San Francisco. Then they go to Indy to play in a dome against the Colts. That's favorable. And then they play the Bears. Again, pretty favorable matchups, all three of them. So this does feel like a situation where it makes a lot of sense to have Purdy for a playoff run, which is kind of why I was hesitant to say drop him. But I do think we're past that, because with Purdy, I do think that he does have that upside in the playoff run. So I think, to me personally, like, Daniel Jones is a guy I've been kind of picking on a lot lately, because a lot of his, like, fantasy upside in previous years has been tied to mobility. And it hasn't been the case necessarily this year. But the one thing I will say with him is that I do think that his mobility is part of the reason defenses have to remain honest with him this year. And without that mobility, we have one sample size of the Texans last week. And maybe that's not a real sample size, but he wasn't as good. So Daniel Jones been going down lately. Not that Darnold's been great, but I do think that, honestly, I'm fine with replacing both of them. Like, obviously, you can't do that this week because they're both on a bye week. Or Purdy's on a bye week. Jaden just might not play. But I do think that the first one to go for me is going to be Daniel Jones. And then I would drop Darnold next week and try to grab Purdy. Because for me personally, they're both guys that I would rather have in the playoff run over those two other guys. Because Purdy to me is like a good, he to me is a good play in the playoffs, like as is. And then you can replace him with Jaden if you're less comfortable from a matchup perspective. But to me, honestly, I would rather just roll out with Purdy for a while. Appreciate the super chat, man. Tyler Sperry, appreciate the super chat. Fairbairn or Aubrey? Yeah, I think we talked about this last night, and I'll reiterate it. I'll go with Fairbairn because my whole philosophy is, from an offensive perspective, you have to look at the Cowboys and say it's not Aubrey, right? Like, we all know Aubrey is not taking a step back as a kicker. So then you have to start looking at it from a different perspective and say, what is the reason? Well, think about it like this. Dallas's offense has gotten so good this year. It's been really good with Brian Schottenheimer. And he's a younger coach than Mike McCarthy. So in previous years, McCarthy was always known as a kick it type of guy. Like either punt it or kick a field goal. So that comes from the conservative nature, right? And so they would always stall out in drives, and then they'd kick the field goal. Dallas this year, they're so confident offensively that they're like, well, I'm going to go for it on 4th and 4 rather than kick it like McCarthy would have done last year. So that minimizes the amount of kicks that Brandon Aubrey kicks in a game from a field goal perspective. So that to me is a big reason why Aubrey, without looking super deep in it, has not been great this year from a fantasy perspective. And Fairbairn's in the exact opposite situation. They want to play these lower scoring games where field goals matter a lot more. So I think for me, Fairbairn is the answer because I think his ceiling is just higher. I think that Aubrey's floor is really solid, but Fairbairn's ceiling is 20. And I don't see that with Aubrey right now. Appreciate the super chat, man. Okay, next up we had Michael Merowitz again. Good to see you. 1 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex. Mason, Chris Rodriguez, Vidal, Neal, Ladd, and Wilson. So Ladd's going in. That's a pretty obvious example of someone that just based on player and based on floor, he's got to go in, and I think his ceiling is the highest out of all of them too. 2 wide receivers. So you basically, I mean, you have to play Wilson too because he's the only other receiver I see on here. So if I'm getting that right, looks like you're going to have to play both of those guys. Now, when it comes to the running back and the flex, here's how I've got them ranked. So Devin Neal is first, then it's Jordan Mason, then it's Chris Rodriguez, then it's Vidal. Because if Hampton comes back this week, I don't think Vidal will have the same amount of upside he's had in previous weeks. And also Vidal, I look at him as a guy that's been Jekyll and Hyde this year, and last week was his big fire up week. So I don't have as much confidence in rolling out Vidal when Amari and Hampton comes back into the lineup. So I would say Vidal is an easy bench for me. Devin Neal feels okay to play just because from a workload perspective, he'll get it. And same thing goes to Mason. You know, Jordan Mason is not exactly a guy I'm like gung-ho to play in a lot of situations, but in certain situations like yours, it makes sense to do that. Because with Jordan Mason, he's going to get everything in the backfield. Probably not everything, but he'll get 95%. And so it makes sense to play a guy like Jordan Mason in the matchup he has versus Washington. Because Chris Rodriguez, while he is the lead back and he is the preferred back I would play in Washington, I don't view him as a locked and loaded lineup guy because the offense's upside is not great from a rushing perspective. So I would personally go with Neal and I would go with Jordan Mason as the running back in the flex, and then my 2 wide receivers. Like I said, it looks like you only have those 2 wide receivers listed, so you got to play them. Appreciate the super chat, man. G Medina, what's going on? Good to see you in here. What's going on, Ryan? Full PPR. Do I start or sit, or do I start St. Brown or stick with Franklin at wide receiver 2? Also half PPR at running back, bench 1 this week. Javonte, Judkins, or Kyron. So the first question is a good example of where I would play Amon Ra St. Brown. Troy Franklin is low enough in my rankings for me. And I'll be honest, like, after watching the game back again, because I put the, like, sometimes it's very rare that this happens because one thing I always preach on this channel, I watch every game, whether it takes me in, like, whether I watch it on game day or I watch it after the fact. Usually, if I watch it after the fact, I'm able to look at it from a more analytical perspective. When I was watching Denver and Washington play on Sunday night, I was just enjoying the game because it was so good. So I wanted to go back and watch it again and see if I was missing anything. One thing I will say I was missing is the snap count percentage was going down for Franklin. And it has been going down lately. So Franklin, if you look at the snap count percentage, he was the wide receiver 3 in the offense. And one thing I always say on this channel is wide receivers, snap counts, and routes run are the 2 most pivotal factors defining a true wide receiver 1. And he was 3rd in those departments. So he is being on the field less often. And Pat Bryant is stepping in. So to me, if I could re-rank my rankings from, and I will re-rank them, but like if I could put the video out again for the wide receiver rankings, I would not rank Franklin as high. Because Franklin is a guy that I don't view the same as I did earlier in the week. So if what I think is real, and Troy Franklin is now borderline wide receiver 3 in Denver, I would rather have the wide receiver 2 in quotations for Detroit tonight in a high-flying matchup with a better quarterback. Because I'd rather take the shot on a higher upside guy who's going to be on the field than Troy Franklin, who I don't trust to be on the field most of the time in this offense. So I will take the shot on Amon Ra St. Brown over Franklin tonight. Half PPR at running back, bench one between Javonte, Judkins, and Kyren. Yeah, here's my thing. Kyren fell in the rankings because I think I have to look at him differently than I once did because he is just not any longer going to be their workhorse. Like he has not had a workhorse year for the Los Angeles Rams. And this kind of goes back to my research that I do about running backs with 350 plus touch seasons, which he had last year. He has not had that same type of season. So he's been used more sparingly, and you have to factor that in. But you also have to factor in how good the matchup is, and I do think it's really good. Javonte's matchup tonight is another one of those. Here's the thing with Javonte. His workload has been so solid, and he's on such a good offense that it feels wrong to bench him. And I will say I don't love the matchup tonight because Detroit's strength of their defense has been the run defense. So I don't love the matchup from that perspective. And I'm not going to bench Javonte because of the offensive strength. Kyren and Judkins, it kind of goes back to the same type of question, which is which offense has the most amount of upside. And obviously that answer is the Los Angeles Rams. So to me personally, I don't think I can realistically bench Kyren, but I will say it's very close. Like those two guys are very close in my rankings. And you could make a gut call in this one because we'll line them up in the comparison feature. Kyren Williams and Judkins. Kyren's 4 spots ranked behind Judkins. And like I said, I do think that we're in position to where you have to kind of look at it logically and say to yourself, who's got the better chance of getting 4 or 5 touchdowns in this game? Clearly that answer is the Rams. So, and I don't think the Browns have this massive advantage from a matchup perspective. So I'm going to go against my rankings and I'm going to play Kyren. So I'll sit Judkins. Appreciate the super chat. Napa, what's going on? Good to see you. Amon Ra St. Brown versus Jaylen Warren for the flex. See, this feels like one of those thinkers for me because Jaylen Warren is a guy that you can rely on from a workload perspective. But when it comes to upside for fantasy, there's not much. Like at most, you'll get like 15 to 17 points from Warren. So just from that perspective, I'm having trouble playing Warren above Amon Ra. But again, I have two mixed feelings on this one. Part of me feels like Amon Ra St. Brown could be a decoy out there tonight, or he could get re-injured. But the other part of me is like, if this matchup truly features two offenses that score 25 plus on each other, then I'm going to want pieces in this matchup. And I don't feel like I can rightfully say to bench Amon Ra, who, yes, there's some risk here tonight, for a guy that ultimately doesn't have much reward. Like, the risk-reward meter in my heart right now is saying play Amon Ra because I'm an upside guy. Like, I'm driven by upside in all aspects of my life, outside of fantasy, but in fantasy too. So, to me, it's so hard to bench Amon Ra versus a guy like Warren. I'd probably play Amon Ra St. Brown. Just because I'm an upside junkie. Like, I will live and die by the sword of the upside. And that's one of those where I'll go with him tonight. Appreciate the super chat. Masab, what's going on? Good to see you. Hey, Ryan, hope all is well. All is great. I'm geared up for a good matchup tonight. Hope all is well with you. Dak tonight or Burrow. Also pick 2 from each. Etienne, Brees, Barkley for running back, and Higgins, McLaurin, Egbuka for wide receiver. So the quarterback question. I saw somebody comment on my quarterback rankings which I posted several hours ago at this point. So if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. But I had a comment on there that someone noticed I had Burrow a couple spots ranked over Dak this week. And listen, my rankings, like you guys who have been here enough, you've seen me make plays and tell you guys to play someone who was ranked below somebody else. So I don't always adhere to my own rankings, particularly when it's really close. So it's not that I feel married to Burrow in this matchup versus the Bills, because I don't. But I will say this, Burrow, I do not worry about this weather at all. I don't. I don't care how snowy it is or how dry it is. Both Burrow and Allen are big-time quarterbacks who play in this weather every year at this time. So the matchup from that perspective doesn't bother me. Of course, Dak tonight, in theory, is a good matchup. The one thing that concerned me when I was thinking deeply on this matchup, and I was playing out how it could go in my head, is the only thing that could screw Dak up is if the Lions are on the field for a long time because their offense is moving the ball against their passing defense, and it throws off the Lions' rhythm because it throws off the Cowboys' rhythm because the Lions have a stronger front seven too. So I do feel like Dak could have maybe not the same level of upside as Burrow this week, but I will add this. If I was in that position, I would probably play Dak only because of the fact that I think Dak's floor is really solid. I don't think that he has as wide of a range of what could happen as Burrow. Now, I will add this. I think Burrow's ceiling is probably 3 to 4 points higher than Dak's. I think Dak's ceiling is probably 28 points tonight, and I think Burrow's is probably 33 or 32. But I think Burrow's floor is probably in the range of 16, while Dak's is probably in the range of 20. So I do think of Dak as a high upside play tonight with a more stable floor. So I would say Dak is probably the play I would personally make. Pick 2 from the running backs, Etienne, Breece, Barkley. I would play Etienne and Breece. I don't have interest in playing a running back who, yes, gets the work, but is so... Jeez. Excuse me. I don't have interest in playing a running back who, yes, gets the work, but at the same time has no upside from an efficiency perspective. I don't see the upside with Saquon right now. And my rankings with my running backs, they highlighted exactly what I was saying. I don't have a lot of faith that it turns around at this point. I just think when you give a running back 350 plus touches, and that's not even what he got. He had over 4 if you include the playoffs. He had so many touches last year that it's no wonder why this guy all of a sudden isn't as good this year. It is no wonder. So I think to me, Barkley is the bench because with Breece, we get the same level of workload, but we get the big play upside that Saquon's missed this year. And then with Etienne, the only problem I've got with him is the fact that he's not exactly a surefire number 1 running back, but even when Bayshultun has been involved, Etienne is still involved too. So I'll stick with the upside, guys. I think Etienne and Breece are bigger upside. Higgins, McLaurin, Egbuka, pick 2. If it's T. Higgins, he's going in. Jaden Higgins is a different question. If it's T. Higgins, he's going in for sure. Again, I don't worry about the weather. The weather is literally a non-factor to me. They're used to playing in this weather. McLaurin and Egbuka, it's really interesting because I was thinking to myself this exact question tonight. I was driving home from a doctor's appointment 2 hours ago, and I was like, what would I do if I was tasked with deciding between McLaurin and Egbuka? And I rested on Terry. And the reason why is because with Egbuka, the only problem I've been highlighting is that the guy has not been efficient on his work. It's not that he's not getting the work. He is. But if Mike returns this week, if Godwin is still healthy right now, Bucky's return are indicative of what could happen. If anything, the work goes down. And he's already been inefficient on the work lately. So I'll take Terry with how efficient he's been with his work compared to Egbuka gately. But if it is Jaden Higgins, I'll play Egbuka. So if it's T. Higgins, I'll go T. Higgins and Terry. If it's Jaden Higgins, I'll go Egbuka and Terry. Appreciate the super chat, man. Okay, next up we have Braden Vargas. Good to see you in here tonight. Start Montgomery and Amon Ra or Watson and Kenneth. That's tough. Watson or Amon Ra actually feels like one of those fair ones that I probably would go with Christian Watson. This whole Amon Ra thing, man, I got to tell you, as I answer more questions about him tonight, what I'm finding is that if I'm in need of an upside play and the other guy that is in the discussion, like Jaylen Warren, for example, I know I can't get 25 out of Jaylen Warren, and I know I can with Amon Ra, so I'll take Amon Ra. But I could get 25 from Watson too. So, and I think Watson probably actually has a more stable floor at this point than Amon Ra because he doesn't have the injury designation that Amon Ra has. So Watson to me is actually a better play because Watson, it's not like he's got a bad matchup. He takes on the Bears secondary, which has been the problem of their defense. So I think if it's between those two guys, what I'm finding out answering a bunch of Amon Ra questions tonight is it's going to come down to what do I need? If I need upside and only one of them can give me the upside, I'll go with Amon Ra. But if both of them can provide me the same level of upside, but maybe there's a floor discrepancy there, I'll go with Christian Watson. Because Watson, to me, doesn't have as low as a floor as he's usually had this year, and I think Amon Ra's floor is 0 tonight. So I'll take that shot. And if it's one or the other, I'll go with the Watson side and go with Kenneth. I'll go with Kenneth either way over Montgomery. That's what I would personally do. Like if it's between those two guys, I'll play Kenneth 100% of the time over Dave Montgomery. So yeah, I'll take the Watson and the Kenneth side. Appreciate the super chat. Napa, what's going on? One more, Jaylen Warren versus Pittman. Pittman has been scary because, again, what's always bubbled, and I've always said this, what bubbles under the surface with Michael Pittman is that his target share is not only inconsistent at times, but when you find out that when he doesn't get a touchdown, what you find out is that his target share is actually kind of low. So he needs to get in the end zone. Jaylen Warren gets more consistent volume. Like Jaylen Warren, you could basically guarantee that he gets 15 carries and 2 or 3 targets. Like Warren's upside from the volume perspective is very steady. So he's always going to get you a good 8 to 10 points in fantasy football, depending on the format. But the ceiling lies with Pittman, I believe. I would say that Pittman's ceiling is probably 20 and Warren's is probably 16. But Pittman's floor is about 3. So they're close enough in my rankings where it's kind of a gut call. My rankings actually are probably going to say Pittman. But I would say this. I will personally play Pittman if it's me. But if you are in position where you need a floor play and you need a guy who can get you a safe 8 to 10 points, then Warren is the play. But if you want to get like the big upside week and you need to get in your playoffs or you're fighting for seeding, whatever the case is, and you've got a tougher opponent and you need to put up a lot of points, like Pittman is going to be the guy. And I'm wired to go with upside. So if it's between those two, I think Pittman's is still higher. Appreciate the super chat. Adrian, good to see you again. Should I drop Dart for Godwin? I have Hurts. I probably wouldn't drop Dart. Like I said, I think, especially with Jalen Hurts, like here's something that I talked about this on the quarterback rankings today. quarterback and tight end rankings dropped a couple hours ago. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it after the live stream. One of the things that I covered on the on that quarterback rankings was that Hurts has been a problem because his rushing upside isn't there like it used to be. If he gets in the end zone from a tush push, that's when it's okay. But we haven't been getting like 50 rushing yards from Hurts this year because he's not doing that as much. So I don't view, and like the way he's throwing the ball, I don't view Hurts as a locked and loaded every week quarterback play. Like, he's a safe play, but one thing that just needs to be said again is, guys, Dart has been so good this year. Like, I don't look at this last week against the Patriots and say it's indicative on Dart the rest of the year. I just don't look at it that way. This was his worst game by far as an NFL player. It was his worst game by far, and he was still making plays. Like, Dart is going to be a guy that is going to continue to run. He said it himself, and he's going to continue to push the ball down the field. Like, Dart, to me, if I have Jaden, I'm holding on to Dart because Jalen Hurts is not a guy I feel like I can trust throughout the playoffs. There will be matchups where I pick Dart. So I get the perspective of trying to go after Godwin. I would just say if you do go after Godwin, find somebody else. I would try to keep two quarterbacks in this scenario. Appreciate the super chat, man. Tato plays. What's going on? Amon Ra or J-Mo? Yeah, to me, I said this earlier. I'll go with J-Mo because the way I look at what I'm getting to is that answering a lot of Amon Ra questions tonight. What I've determined is that when it comes to upside, which is always what I'm wired to do, is go for the highest amount of upside. If I have one player, and that player is Amon Ra, who I believe can give me 25, and the other option can only get me 15, maybe 17 points, I'll pick Amon Ra. So, like, again, Jalen Warren, I would play Amon Ra over Jalen Warren. I would play Amon Ra over somebody like Kyle Monangai. Maybe not even Kyle Monangai. I would play Amon Ra over somebody like Justin Jefferson. But I will, if like with Jamison Williams, he's a guy that can give me 25 too. So what it comes down to is I think J-Mo's floor, as unstable as it is, I think it's actually safer than Amon Ra's tonight. Because J-Mo, even with Amon Ra, who may be at 50% tonight, he's going to be involved. And I know he just had a goose egg a couple weeks ago, but if you looked at that game, and I said this at the time, that day, he had two big plays that got called back for penalties. So it's not like he was irrelevant in that game. Ever since Campbell took over the play calling, he has been relevant in every game. So I look at J-Mo and I look at Amon Ra and I say, they probably got similar ceilings tonight, but I would say Amon Ra's floor is about 0 points because he could be a decoy, he could get re-injured, he could just be not on the field much. Any of those can happen. But with J-Mo, we know he's going to be on the field. We know he's going to be involved. So I'll go with J-Mo here. Appreciate the super chat. Real happy. Good to see you again. Start 3, Amon Ra, St. Brown, Egbuka, Devonta, or Wilson. Or Watson. Then for quarterback, should I start Baker or drop him for Darnold or Trevor? I have May on the bye, also Saquon or Devin Neal. Okay, so we'll start with the start 3. Amon Ra, Egbuka, Devonta, or Watson. I'll go Watson over Amon Ra. I'll go with Devonta Smith over Amon Ra. Egbuka or Amon Ra. Man, I'll be honest, that lineup, any way I cut this cake, this lineup feels like one of those where these wide receivers could either combine for 60-plus points or could combine for 15 to 20. So they're all unstable to me. The way I look at this is Egbuka has been out there the last month not being efficient on his targets. So I'll take the shot on Amon Ra over Egbuka because I believe that while Agbuka's floor is probably safer, I don't think that he'll get the upside as likely as Amon Ra could tonight. So I'll go with Amon Ra over Agbuka, and I'll play Amon Ra alongside Devonta Smith and Christian Watson. For quarterback, should you go with Baker or drop him for Darnold or Trevor? You have May on bye. So here's the thing. When I was going through my quarterback rankings today, I turned some heads when I didn't have Baker inside the top 12. That was not by accident. Top 16. That was not by accident. Baker, if you just look at the guy, hasn't been that great. Like, he has not been a tremendous fantasy player this year. And particularly over the last, month and a half to 2 months. Baker, what has he done that's been oh, he belongs in the top 16? He's got tenure there. It's no. Baker hasn't done good enough over the last month and a half to be a guy I consider to be an every week start. Now, would I drop him? Probably not. I probably wouldn't drop Baker because his matchups get really friendly here. And that's kind of been a problem for Baker is the last several matchups haven't been as friendly. They get friendly starting this week with the New Orleans Saints. So I'm probably reluctant to drop Baker knowing that someone else will pick him up because of name value. So I'd probably roll out Baker this week, even though I've got Darnold and Trevor ranked higher than him. Only because I think in future weeks, Baker has more upside than both these guys. But if it's a must-win situation where you've got to make playoffs, I probably would drop him for Trevor Lawrence. That's probably the way I would do it. But if you're already in comfortable playoff position, you know you're going to make it, I would bite the bullet this week, play Baker, and then just have him there if I believe his matchups are good, which they are. And I would want to play him over Drake May in certain situations. So I would probably bite the bullet and just make sure that I could hold on to Baker for the playoff run. Appreciate the super chat. TTVPH, what's going on? Good to see you in here. Need 2 running backs and 2 wide receivers. Neal, Warren, Monangai, Bam Knight, Vidal, Pittman, Wilson, Vele, Jaden Higgins. So the running backs here, I would go with Kyle Monangai for sure. And I would go with Jalen Warren over Bam Knight, Kamani Vidal, and Devin Neal. Jalen Warren because I think that he's just a better player than a guy like Devin Neal. And because he's on, it's not like his offense is great. Kamani Vidal, I don't have much confidence playing with Amari and Hampton returning. And Bam Knight is not a guy that I view as a super volume heavy guy like Jalen Warren. It's not that Jalen Warren's super volume heavy, but I do think that in the Ravens matchup, they'll run the ball a lot. This is always one of those matchups that always turns into a slugfest because both sides want to prove that they have the bigger set of balls. So I think that Jalen Warren is going to get a lot of work. So I'd play Warren and Monangai. Your wide receivers, Pittman, Wilson, Vele, Jaden Higgins. I'd play Pittman for sure because it just comes down to floor and ceiling combo. I think his floor is higher than Vele's. And I think his ceiling is higher than Higgins. Now, when it comes to Michael Wilson, if he is all alone this week, I'm playing him again. You can bet your butt I'm going to fire up Michael Wilson again if he's all alone. Let's check on Marvin. I know he didn't practice yesterday, so let's see if he practiced today. So he didn't practice. It looks like Marvin's going to miss again. So I'm playing Michael Wilson, no questions asked. I will play him over Justin Jefferson. I will play Michael Wilson. It's hard to say because Amon Ra is playing tonight, but I would play Michael Wilson over Amon Ra St. Brown if I knew that Marvin would be out. So it's unfortunate Amon Ra plays tonight. But yeah, in your position, if Marvin's not there, Michael Wilson's going in my lineup 100% of the time. Appreciate the super chat. Braden Vargas again, good to see you. Pick 2, Odunze, Monty, Amon Ra, Tesla, and Kenneth. Amon Ra will go in because I like his upside better than everybody else's. So to kind of mitigate the risk that Amon Ra has this week, I need a safer floor. And as weird as it is to say this, like, Kenneth, to me, has the safest floor of the bunch. Because with Monty, we've seen him get 2 or 3 point weeks. We've seen Odunze get 2 or 3 point weeks. With Kenneth, you can always count on a solid 9 to 10 points. And with the upside of maybe getting like 17 points. So that to me, just because, like, we need to shoot for upside. That's always what we need to do. Upside, upside, upside is what you should be shooting for. And Amon Ra definitely provides that more than anybody else in your list can. And so to offset and mitigate the risk of having 0 points from Amon Ra tonight, we need to make sure we're getting some. And with Tesla, he could get nothing. With somebody like Odunze, he could get 3. With somebody like Monty, he can get 3. But with Kenneth, you know you're going to get a solid 8 to 10. So I'll go with Kenneth and I'll go with Amon Ra. Appreciate the super chat. Shady Mechanic, what's going on? Good to see you. Jefferson or Genty for my flex PPR league? I'll go with Genty pretty easily because, once again, like with JJ, it's just been so bad that it's like I'm looking for excuses to bench him, but I'm not going to go crazy. But Genty isn't crazy because Genty's a guy that gets a solid workload, and you can count on every week him getting enough touches to give you a 10 to 13 point floor because of the pass catching involvement. And if he gets in the end zone, he can give you 25. So it's pretty easy for me. Genty is the play because Genty, from a PPR perspective, is very involved every week. So I don't think it's a big question. I would go with Ashton Genty. Appreciate the super chat. And then we'll end on Transform for Life. Appreciate the super chat. Goff or Stafford? I will personally go with Matt Stafford because I think that they're going to beat up on the Cardinals. That defense has been bad, and it's in perfect weather. They don't have to worry about it because it's a dome. Like, Stafford is not going to give you 2 straight blunder weeks. Like, he's not going to turn the ball over. He usually doesn't turn the ball over. It's been a magical season for Stafford. Goff is a good play. I think Goff is a high upside play, but I could see things going wrong tonight for him. I can't really see things going wrong for Stafford, so I would go with Stafford. Appreciate the super chat. All right, we're going to go ahead and end it there. We're running up on 7 o'clock here, so like the video, subscribe to the channel to show your support. Go get your start sit questions posted on fsroundup.com. Free to vote, free to start your own poll. If you want access to my top 250 rankings, the automatic waiver tool, the comparison feature, the league sync up feature, you could do that with the premium subscription. And we're still doing team breakdowns, guys. If you do want to do a team breakdown, it's a one-time payment at $55. Once the payment processes, once the email hits, we will break down your team on a live stream as well. So let's enjoy a good night because I think this is going to be a good game here tonight. Love you guys, and I'll see you after the game tonight. Peace out.